Assalamu alaikum. So the last time you saw me, I was very pregnant and I had just found out that I was having a boy. So I made it out of the other side. I had my baby and I definitely have a story to tell now. I don't want to drag this on too long because I have to get back to my baby. So let me just get started. So I was debating if I should even share all the details about my pregnancy and my labor, but I decided to go ahead and share it because when I was having doubts and questions, difficulties, or I just kind of wanted to figure out what was happening with other moms and try to compare with what was happening with me, I looked on YouTube and it was very helpful to me to see people's story. So if my story can help someone, then I feel like it's totally worth it. So initially I found that I was pregnant because I took a test at home, and 2 days before I took that test I had a dream that God sent me a baby boy, and in the dream the boy looked just like my husband. He was about 3 months old and God just gave him to me and said, take care of this child. He's very important. So I was like, okay, that was interesting. So I bought a pregnancy test. I took the pregnancy test and I was pregnant. Until I got to actually figure out what I had, if I was having a boy or a girl. I kind of always thought I was having a girl, but it turned out that the dream was correct. I was having a boy. So I found that I was pregnant. I went to the doctor, confirmed, yes, I'm pregnant. And then they asked me, would you like to go for a sonogram? And I said yes. So they scheduled that for me. I went for the sonogram. And the people at the sonogram place, they said, okay, your results will be ready tomorrow. So I rushed back the next day and I got my results. But when I read the results, I was really confused because what I saw was gestation 1 and gestation 2 and measurements. So I was like, okay, I'm not a doctor, but I think I'm having twins. So I called the place and I was like, listen, I need you to help me figure this out. Am I having twins? So they said, hey, we can't discuss this with you. You have to take the papers and make an appointment with your doctor and she'll review everything with you. So sure enough, that's what I do. I go to the doctor and they said, we have amazing news for you. And I'm kind of like grinning because I already know that I'm pregnant with twins. So they tell me, yes, you're pregnant with twins. And I'm just like, I'm pregnant with twins? What? My husband was just like, how? And then it was weird because the gestation of the two babies were different. So it's almost like I got pregnant twice. Like 1 week and then the next week. It was weird. But a few weeks later, I went for a second sonogram just to go and check up. And I went to Winnie Palmer. So that's a hospital here in Orlando, Florida. So I went there. I came in and the lady there, she was just kind of like, oh, lift your shirt, lay down. Like she didn't even say hi. Kind of weird. But okay. So I go and she scans me and she gives me the paper back. But she's only scanning one section. And I was like, oh, that's weird. If there's two, shouldn't she scan the whole thing? And then they tell me to wait and the doctor's going to see me. So the doctor comes in and she tells me that one of the gestations didn't make it, that I had something called blighted ovum. So I'm trying to figure out what she's saying. She tells me that the second baby never developed a proper heartbeat and that they didn't make it, so that I'm not having twins. So I'm just trying to process, like, are you telling me that my baby died? So I'm obviously upset at the moment. I'm still a little like, oh my God, I could have had twins. So my eyes start to water, and she's like, oh, it's not a big deal. You know, the baby never developed a heartbeat, so there was never really two babies. And I'm just like, for weeks, I've been thinking that I'm having twins. So you can't tell me that there was never two babies. When you told me, the other people told me I was having two babies and my doctor confirmed it. So it's really crazy. At this point, I don't like going to the doctor. I feel like they're very cold all the time, most of the time. And she looks at me and she says, well, if we never had this technology, you would have never known you were having twins. So it's not a big deal. So I look at her and I say, okay. She's like, well, if we never had this technology, you never would have known. And I'm like, well, if I had a dick, I'd be a man. And I understand, yes, I'm Muslim and I'm not supposed to carry myself that way. But I was raised in the Bronx, in New York, and it comes out sometimes. That was one of those times. She was like, whoa, yes, it makes a difference. You told me I was having twins, and then you told me that I'm not having twins because one of them didn't make it. There's a difference there. You can't just be like, oh, well, if we didn't have this technology, then you would have never known. Well, if I didn't have a vagina, I wouldn't be a woman. Like, there's a huge jump there from what you're saying to what's actually happening. So I was a little upset. That was maybe a little harsh, but I was upset. So I asked her, you know, can I get the paperwork that's stating this so that I can go back to dealing with my midwife? Because originally, if you remember, I was having a midwife and a doula. But when you're having twins, that's considered high risk and you have to go to a high risk OBGYN. So I'm sharing all the details of this, hoping that I can help someone. These are details that I didn't know. So I asked her for a printout so that I can go back to my midwife. She says, oh, you know, we'll just send the papers to your midwife in a few days, next week, whatever. So I'm like, okay, fine. I go to the elevator with my husband. I'm upset. She runs behind me, the doctor, like after maybe 5 minutes. I'm waiting for the elevator. She went out of her way to print the paperwork out and bring it to me herself, because she realized that interaction was really cold and she was very kind of like blasé about the fact that my second baby didn't make it. So she gave me the paperwork. She said, you know, I'm sorry this happened. And that interaction, I feel like, was decent. As my pregnancy progressed, things just got really interesting when it came to dealing with doctors. So I went back to my midwife's care. She's amazing, April Williams. Everything's going normal. She's doing tests and things that she's supposed to do. She tests my iron around the middle of my pregnancy. My iron is low, which, I mean, shame on me, because I was on the whole Dr. Sabi thing for a while a few years ago, and I know the importance of iron. And here I am pregnant and my iron is low. But when you get pregnant, the baby kind of absorbs all your iron, and it's pretty common for women to have low iron when they're pregnant, but it could be a problem. So she tells me, listen, if we can't get your iron up around the time that's time for you to deliver, then I won't be able to deliver your baby, because, you know, there's an amount that I have to meet for me to be able to deal with you, because in case there's an emergency, we don't want to lose you. So I start trying to get my iron up. And then I remembered that they can do an IV of iron. So I suggest that to her. So she says, okay, I can't administer that. I'm going to send you to someone. This is around the middle of my pregnancy. So she sends me to a high-risk doctor. At this point, it's not Winnie Palmer. It's Advent Health. This is another place in Orlando. So they send me there, scan the baby, The lady doing the exam, doing the sonogram, she's super nice. She's like, wow, your baby looks super healthy. Everything is great. I'm like super happy. Because of the whole COVID thing, my husband couldn't be in the room with me. So she let me FaceTime him and he stayed in the lobby. So we did that. Everything's fine. I'm happy. I think everything's great. She's like, all right, the doctor is going to be in and kind of explain everything to you. The doctor comes in and it's a female doctor again. She sits down and she's like, okay, so I took a look at everything and your baby's a little small for how old he is in the pregnancy. So I'm like, okay, fine. She's like, yeah, we're concerned, so we're going to schedule you for an induction. We're going to induce your labor at 36 weeks, I think she said. We're going to induce your labor, and she just continues on, and I'm just like, what? I came in here for vitamins. I came in here for iron, and now you're telling me that you're scheduling me to take my baby out early and induce my labor and not let me go into natural labor. I'm not having a home birth. You're now taking over my entire plan. So I'm just like, what? She tells me this and I'm like, okay. I'm just silent listening to her go on. And then I just ask her, but wouldn't he be smaller at 36 weeks than at 40 weeks? And the look on her face was like, how dare I question her? She was pissed. She was like, yeah, but he'll be alive. Do you want your baby to die? I was livid. I didn't even give her a lot of energy because I could feel myself getting upset. And again, I don't want the Bronx to come out of me. I don't want to be like at the doctor's office. So I'm trying to be calm. I'm very, very pregnant, very emotional. You know, I'm pregnant. And she's looking at me and she's telling me, do you want your baby to die? And I'm like, what? But up until this point, I've been in the care of my midwife and my doula. Shout out to my doula, Doulas of Orlando. Luna from Doulas of Orlando, she had been giving me classes every few weeks, explaining to me my rights, how to deal with people that are aggressive, abusive. It's a thing. Like, it's actually a thing that doctors are imposing their will on pregnant women so that they can get them to have unnecessary treatment or have C-sections that they don't need and all this stuff. So this is my first pregnancy. I wasn't aware of all of this, all the layers that are involved with being pregnant and dealing with these people. But she had been training us. So she said, if you ever deal with a doctor and they're giving you all this stuff and trying to scare you into doing things that you're not comfortable with, be calm and ask them questions, speak their language. So she's asking me, do you want your baby to die? Yeah, he'll be alive. If you take him early, he'll be smaller, but he'll be alive. So I'm trying to understand why they think he's going to die. And they're saying that basically he's not getting big enough. And then they need to pull him out so that they can like hook him up to something to keep him going or let him get bigger outside instead of get bigger inside because he's not getting bigger. This is their logic, right? So I asked her, the way I was taught, what are the odds? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what are the numbers? What are the percentage? What are the chances that my baby is gonna die? She's like, oh, well, 1 to 5%. I smile and I'm just like, are you kidding me? You're like yelling at me, do you want your baby to die? I'm like being all extra with a pregnant woman with a 1 to 5% chance. And I'm like, okay, yes, nobody wants their baby to die. But the way you're speaking is like it's a certainty that my baby's gonna die if I don't listen to you. So she can tell I'm not you know, interested in what she's saying. She's like, well, what's your birth plan? I was like, well, I have a home birth planned, and I have a midwife and a doula. And she says, well, your baby's changing that plan again. I'm smiling. God is in charge, lady, not you. You don't get to decide every little thing. And at the end of the day, I'm the mother. I will take your advice, your recommendations, and I will weigh them and I will make a decision based on all the information. You're not just going to tell me how this is going to go. So at this point, she's just being, I feel like, rude. And I'm trying to be as calm as possible. She says that 5%, she's unapproving of my home birth. And she's like, well, at the end, you can do whatever you want. I'm just giving you my recommendations. You got that damn right. So then she opens the door, we're leaving, and then she says, well, let me walk you to the elevator so that I make sure you leave the building. She walked out of the room she was seeing me in, down the hallway, out of the doctor's area, into the outside hallway, and walked me all the way to the elevator and pressed the button for me to make sure I was leaving the building. I was like, I don't want to think this lady's racist, but she's definitely rude. So that's the experience that I had dealing with that. And they really wanted to induce my labor. I obviously did not go that way. My birth story is another crazy story. But I just wanted to share that. So I had blighted ovum with the twins. And one didn't make it. And then I get to this point and they want to induce my labor. So why I wanted to make this video is, don't just let the doctors or authority figures take charge of your pregnancy. This is your pregnancy. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm speaking to you as a woman that was pregnant. And I have my own intuition. I have my own feelings about situations. I have my own connection with my baby. The whole entire time they were telling me your iron's low, the baby's small, the baby could die, all of this, I knew that my baby was fine. So this is what I did about it. Because now my midwife's in a bad situation. Because if a doctor is saying this is what they're recommending, my midwife technically, the way it is in Florida, I don't know about other states, is a doctor is above a midwife. She can't really go against their recommendations. So if you're dealing with a situation like this is how I dealt with it. Maybe you could do the same. I went for a second opinion. So she was saying, the original lady was saying that my baby's abdomen was too small. His head circumference was too small. And because of that, she felt that he wouldn't make it. She also said that my amniotic fluid, which is the fluid that surrounds the baby, was lower than she'd like. So I go for a second opinion. They tell me your baby's head is fine. Your amniotic fluid is fine. Now I did start drinking more coconut water before that second visit. So they told me those two things are totally fine. Your baby's abdomen is a little smaller than we'd like, so we want you to come back. So I said, okay, I just want to get everything clear. Is my baby healthy and is my baby fine at this point? They tell me, yes, your baby is fine. But we don't know if he's going to be fine tomorrow. So we want you to come back every 3 days. And my insurance does not cover this person. I'm like, this is like a $500 visit. You want me to come back every 3 days until I give birth? Because you don't know if my baby's going to be fine tomorrow? Nobody knows if my baby's going to be fine tomorrow. My baby's fine right now. I can't go every day in a panic and see if you approve of my baby's measurements. This is insanity. I'm like, this the way people deal with pregnant women? Crazy. So at this point, I'm around the time that I was supposed to be induced, and I just kept buying time. From that point, 36 weeks to 40 weeks, I was supposed to go every 3 days. I ended up just seeing him one more time. This is a male doctor this time. He was actually Muslim. And the lady that did my sonogram was also Muslim, which made me feel better. But I only saw him one other time, and I think I was supposed to see him like 5 more times. I saw him one other time toward the middle, and then he told me again, your baby's fine. But this time they did more tests. So they did like a test where they hear the baby's heartbeat. They do a more in-depth scan, and they told me, yes, your baby's fine, but we don't know if he's going to be fine, you know, in a few days. So come back again. So I just kept buying time, and I kept praying about it, and I didn't want to deal with all the stuff that they had going on. What was crazy to me is like, okay, the actual act of being pregnant for me was not that stressful. I mean, I was throwing up the entire pregnancy. I had pretty consistent morning sickness. It was really bad in the beginning, and then it just kind of ended up being throwing up once in the morning after that. But I had morning sickness the entire pregnancy. Other than that, my entire pregnancy was pretty smooth. The most stressful part of my pregnancy was dealing with these people. I'm like, had I not had to deal with them, my pregnancy would have been amazing and just so smooth. So I see him that one more time, and then I just sit at home and wait to go into labor. At this point, I'm 39 weeks, almost 40, and I start to go into labor. That's crazy. So I want to leave my labor story for another day, because it was a whole nother interesting situation where they have their numbers and they have their expectations and they have their markers that they're looking for. This baby was not trying to follow their markers and their numbers and their measurements and their timing. This baby came when he wanted to come, how he wanted to come, and he's here. I will say my baby is totally healthy. My baby was totally fine. And in the next video, I will explain to you if I had home birth, how that went, who was there, what happened, how long did it take, what was my initial labor like, contractions. I will be sharing all of that with you. But I did want to make this video about how the pregnancy was in dealing with these people, because other videos of other situations helped me. So go with your gut. You know best. You're the baby's mother. You know your body. You know your baby. Do what you feel is best once you have all of the information. Consider it, think about it, pray about it, and you decide. Don't let any doctor push you around. You're not going to seek these people's care to be bullied. They work for you. You don't work for them. So remember that, and be well. Assalamu alaikum.